episode. I kind of want to make. I kind of want to get more villages, but I don't. I'm not gonna transfer villages because half of the world. So I might want to breed the villagers. I think I kind of watched the video a minute ago, so I'll kind of remember. Yeah, I think you need a pet or a house. I'm making a house, so I'm making a pet. It's much easier.
So maybe she somehow survived her encounter against the Omnidroid, and Everseer
Here.
decided he might as well try to go and find her, but couldn't because maybe he knew if he did, the timeline would change.
No
I
shovel.
still think Psyche likely got one-shotted by the Omnidroid, and that's why her body wasn't found, but who really knows? How every super probably died in The Incredibles, Episode 4, Macro Burst. Before we start, I recommend you watch the previous 3 episodes if you haven't already, and also as per the usual, for those who are new, I'm going to quickly recap how Syndrome plans to kill all supers in his evil plan called Operation Kronos. First, Syndrome finds the location of the super, sends his ally Mirage to go recruit them and get them on their island. Then they tell the super to destroy their robot that is on the loose on the island, and then hope that the robot kills the super. If it doesn't, Syndrome builds a new, stronger version that counters the super's powers that destroyed it. Syndrome then invites the super back for dinner, just for them to be ambushed by the next Omnidroid. Alrighty, time to discuss Syndrome's fourth victim, Macroburst. Before we talk about what happened,
I need wood.
important part, his personality. With a threat rating of 5.9, Macroburst has the powers of wind generation, flight, and superhuman endurance and agility. Finally, someone who can actually stand a chance against the version 1 Omnidroid, as the previous 3 were eliminated pretty easily. Also, since the first Omnidroid prototype hasn't been destroyed yet, it is still programmed to target an idiot like Universal Man, and it really hasn't had to do much to beat Psychwave and Everseer, so this Omnidroid still likely fights in a less aggressive way and isn't too strong yet. Anyways, before we get to Macroburst's first fight against the Omnidroid, let's discuss his background. He used to be Everseer's sidekick when he was a kid, so I think it is easy to assume that Syndrome and Mirage quickly found his location through his connection through Everseer, who they had already found. Also, a key detail to know about Macroburst is that he has severe claustrophobia, so remember that later. Now, I think when Macroburst first got on the island and battled the Omnidroid, it probably wasn't too difficult for him to use his flight and wind generation to dodge the Omnidroid's attacks, and then use his to blow the Omnidroid off the island.
You are on my island, on my territory.
Realize that there's someone who's actually a threat, finally, and therefore Syndrome begins to build the second Omnidroid, which will be designed to counter Macroburst for the second fight. Of course, Macroburst doesn't realize that there will be a second fight, so when Syndrome and Mirage invite him back, I think this is where Syndrome realizes that he has to put the super at a massive disadvantage. Remember I said Macroburst has a severe phobia of claustrophobia? Well, I think Syndrome's dinner room plan comes into action because of him. As you see here, Mr. Incredible enters the dinner room unsuspecting of the Omnidroid that will appear right outside after the wall opens up. So I guess that Macroburst was really nervous entering this room alone, likely got even more scared after the Omnidroid popped out of nowhere. And so I think since this room is a small space and the fact that Macroburst is afraid of small spaces, he cannot fly out in time or fail to do so because generating wind in a small area would be difficult along with his fear. Plus, Syndrome likely made the Omnidroid more wind resistant and heavier, so Macroburst could not pull it off his feet. And so I think in this very room is where the Omnidroid managed to trap Macroburst and kill him sadly. Anyways, that's what I think happened to Macroburst, and hey, at least he managed to kill one Omnidroid before dying. How every super probably died in The Incredibles, Episode 5, Phalange and Bladestone. I'm tired of repeating the summary of how Syndrome plans to kill all the supers in The Incredibles, so if you are new, pause this video and read this paragraph explanation. Today we are covering 2 supers who, I'm going to be honest, aren't the most interesting, but we still need to figure out what happened to them. Before we discuss them, the 4th victim, Macroburst, managed to kill the first Omnidroid version. So now Syndrome has to build a new and improved second version of the Omnidroid, which now no longer runs on wheels, and likely has more resistance to forces like wind generation and is heavier. Let's start off with the 5th victim, Phalange, and discuss his powers. With a threat rating of 4.7, Phalange has the power of sonic voice field projection. So basically he can scream really loud and project blasts of sonic voice fields. However, a downside to his power is that he can get laryngitis, which affects the vocal cords and causes him to no longer scream and use his power. This guy is low-key the definition of mid because based on the stats here, he isn't the greatest nor the worst. Plus, he only has one power, which is screaming loud. Also, according to the NSA, he has no audio file because he got laryngitis, meaning at one point he lost his power and probably many times in his life. Now the question is, what happened to him after getting recruited by Syndrome? Well, after Macroburst fight, Syndrome designed the second Omnidroid to withstand strong amounts of force generated from wind. And you guess what else is basically affected? Yeah, sonic voice field projections. I think likely when Phalange was recruited, he didn't have laryngitis at the time. was designed to not be blown over easily. And so Phalange was probably killed pretty quickly and didn't stand much of a chance. Now time to discuss the next victim, Blaystone. With a threat rating of 5.5, Blaystone has the power of pyrokinesis, heat control and resistance, and flight. So basically she is just the fire and female version of Frozone, but can also fly. Also, fun fact, she lives in a love triangle with Frozone and Downburst was recruited by Syndrome after her. So I think it's also reasonable to say that they found Frozone's location based off of Blaystone, even though Frozone said he doesn't talk to anyone besides Mr. Incredible after the glory days. Since Syndrome and Mirage always make sure to have the super be at a disadvantage, they likely chose a rainy day to send Blaystone out to fight the Omnidroid, so her powers would be hindered, or simply the
like
Omnidroid
this.
was already somewhat heat resistant because someone like Macroverse could have blown it into the lava already, and therefore be immune to Blaystone's fire production.
I still need the break.
Yoga gear at stellar prices, and that you'll never live down that back tab.
Wait. I remember back then in the game where the seeds used to be called seeds, not just wheat seeds.
To smile again.
There's only one way to make buttermilk biscuits really good. From scratch. Bake fresh all morning. It's not the easy way, but it's the right way. Heart, goodness in the making. Taxes. What's so taxing?
Does no, why did I wait that long? It's the cringiest ad ever. What? Shut up.
How every super probably got in The Incredibles, episode 6, Downburst.
6-7.
With a threat rating of 6.5, Downburst became the second super to successfully defeat an Omnidroid, as he defeated the second Omnidroid version. However, he unfortunately lost to the third Omnidroid. Before we discuss his powers, which can be found from this NSA file, it's important to note that in this scene there is a mistake where it says under his picture that he has the powers of flight and gaseous expulsion. However, this turns out to actually be the powers of a later super who gets killed, Stormicide, according to her NSA file. Maybe Syndrome made a mistake and did not realize what Downburst's actual powers were, or this is simply just a mistake in the movie. Anyways, Downburst's actual powers are atomic manipulation, regeneration, and portal teleportation. So basically, limitations. Downburst is one of the few supers who had to train to get better at using his powers. So at first, he could not reshape matter into complex forms, but later could. In fact, he built Elastigirl's Elasticycle. Also, for regeneration, at first he can only heal small wounds on himself. However, later he became able to heal moderate to severe wounds. So now, in his fight against the second Omnidroid, I think his fight took the longest out of any previous super for there to be an outcome. Before he got on the island, it's important to note that Syndrome and Mirage found his location and recruited him because he used to be in a love triangle with Blaystone and Frozone. So likely he was found through his connection of Blaystone, and this is how Frozone's location became known. But Frozone never ended up going to Syndrome's island. Anyways, the reason why Downburst's fight took the longest is because according to his stats and powers, he doesn't really seem to be too strong or have powers that would easily wipe out an Omnidroid easily. So what I think happened is when he found the Omnidroid, he had to create portals to teleport away in order to avoid being killed. And also, if he took any damage, he could just heal himself to be back at 100%. Anyways, I think it took a while for him to keep teleporting away from the Omnidroid to the point where he was able to reshape atoms by the materials he had on the island to create a weapon strong enough to destroy the Omnidroid. While successful in his first fight, I think Syndrome likely designed the Omnidroid to be a lot faster, so it would catch Downburst if he tried to create a portal and teleport away. As you can see, the Omnidroid regains its wheels again. And so, I think when Downburst was invited back to the island to have dinner, he was able to teleport out of the dinner room, but at some point he got caught by the Omnidroid and was killed before he could regenerate any wounds. Anyway,
My game. Let's sleep. Oh, I can't.
So every super probably died in The Incredibles. Episode 7, Hypershock. Before we begin our discussion on the matter of Hypershock's law, I would like to state that I'll be clearing up some confusion I have been observing within the comment section at the end of this video regarding some supers. With a threat rating of 7.5, Hypershock is the third highest rating out of the supers.
Can they give the villager that? I don't know. This is so confusing.
Hypershock was able to destroy the third Omnidroid version, but was killed by the seismic wave generation, which means he can cause very strong earthquakes, flight, and has super strength. I think you can probably guess why his seismic wave generation power is overpowered. Well, when these supers fight Syndrome's Omnidroids, it takes place on this island. So imagine what happens to an island that isn't too big that has a super who can cause earthquakes with super strength on it. Yeah, I think all Hypershock needed to do was just slam his fist into the ground. And that would send seismic waves all around the island and under the Omnidroid, and likely cause the Omnidroid to break apart because if it's still
I
going
don't
on
have
wheels,
carrots,
those
do
wheels
I?
are
I
going to
don't know.
break when the ground breaks. So after he
You, bro, what the?
I think Mirage realized that they
You don't
needed
think
to get
you're
rid of the wheels for good
49?
and actually make it so the Omnidroid can be mobile. As we saw with fighting Mr. Incredible, it could jump really high and roll around. So I think this new version was designed to counter and avoid Hypershock's earthquakes, and it probably did a pretty good job of that. No! Sorry about that, guys. Anyways, now all that said, I don't think there was actually a second fight like this. According to the NSA, Hypershock loves drinking alcohol, so when Syndrome invited him back for dinner, he likely told Mirage to give him a bunch of drinks before his next fight. So once the Omnidroid version 4 surprise attacked him in the dinner room, I think Hypershock was too drunk to even
Too
die and
drunk?
got killed. If he was able to
Stupid
still fight,
Hypershock.
then likely the Omnidroid just jumped whenever he tried causing earthquakes, and soon the Omnidroid just caught him. How every super probably died in The Incredibles. Episode 8, Apogee, Blitzerman, Tradewind, and Vectress. Before we start, 3 of these supers do not have an NSA file as well as an actual picture of them. So this is what I found from the LEGO Incredibles game on Blitzerman, Tradewind, and Vectress. So I guess just try to imagine what they would look like in The Incredibles. Now let's start off with Apogee, and by the way, she is going up against the 4th Omnidroid version, as the previous 3 have been destroyed. This Omnidroid is likely very well adapted to most supers by now, and is quite versatile and pretty quick, as it no longer rolls on wheels. Anyways, with a threat rating of 6.5, Apogee has the power of gravity control. She can manipulate the weight and motion of objects by making them float in the air, so
See if it
flying
works.
or just throw them around. She can also blast waves of gravitational energy at her enemies. However, I don't think this would do anything to the Omnidroid since it has already adapted to powers like this, such as adapting to counter macroburst
Hypershock. Ew, bro, stop fighting. Oh, I did that.
What happened right there? Anyways, fun fact, Apogee can only use her powers when the sun is out. So you know what that means? Yeah, when Syndrome and Mirage recruited her and put her on the island, they likely chose a cloudy day when there was no sun out, so likely when Apogee got on the island, her powers were weakened and she couldn't do much to the Omnidroid and was sadly killed. The next victim after her is Blitzerman. He does not have an NSA file on him, so we can't see his exact stats. However, his power is high-powered locomotion. So basically, he has super speed and is able to blitz through objects with high force. So basically, he's just the Flash or Dash who can crash or has cash in the trash.
What the heck?
Okay, what am I saying? Anyways, I think likely when he got on the island and tried attacking the Omnidroid, they probably just sliced at him or grabbed him while he was running at it or trying to blitz it. And the Omnidroid is very strong and durable, so he likely couldn't do much damage to it and die. If I had to guess his threat rating, I'd say 5.9. Next up after him is Tradewind, and he also doesn't have
You gave me a heart attack.
power of elemental control.
Oh my gosh.
Of Blaze-Stone, Splashdown, and Frozone. But the Omnidroid has already killed Blaze-Stone and is likely already designed to be able to take care of guys like Splashdown or Frozone since there's lava on the island from the volcano. So I do think Tradewind tried to use his powers to attack the Omnidroid, but it likely just tanked all the damage from him and tore Tradewind apart since he probably wasn't strong or durable. But we'll never truly know since he has no NSA file. If I had to guess his threat rating, I'd say 6, 7? Finally is Vector.
6, 7.
It's literally just the female version of Phalange, as her power is voice crack. As her power is subsonic screaming, and shocker, the Omnidroid already defeated Phalange, so if there's another screaming super that shows up like Vectress, her scream likely did not affect the Omnidroid at all, and she was quickly killed. If I had to guess her threat rating, I'd say 4.4. How every super probably died in The Incredibles.
This is so confusing.
Gazer Beam. This episode is arguably the most interesting to discuss what actually happened to him, because in the movie, Gazer Beam is the dead body that Mr. Incredible found in the cave, and in the cave he used his laser eyes to write out Kronos on the cave wall, which turns out to be the password to Syndrome's computer. But before we get into that, how did Gazer Beam end up there, and how did he figure out the password to Syndrome's computer? After superheroes got banned, Gazer Beam, his actual name being Simon Palladino, became an activist for superhuman rights. This led to Syndrome easily being able to track him down and get him on the island. It's important to note that supers like Everseer have already been on Syndrome's island, and I'll explain the importance of that later. With a threat rating of 6.3, Gazer Beam had the power of optical lasers, meaning he could shoot laser beams out of his eyes if he focused intensely enough on something. Now, since Gazer Beam was a superhero activist, he likely tried to keep in contact with many of his fellow supers. In fact, he was close friends with Mr. Incredible, Frozone, and Gamma Jack. So when he noticed a bunch of them going missing, he was likely suspicious of the invitation from Mirage to go to some far-off island where a very wealthy base of new technology was hidden. Gazer Beam was pretty smart and he probably realized that this is where all the supers had gone, but he couldn't prove it quite yet. Since there was a lot of cameras on the island, he likely didn't know where to look to find evidence of the super's death, so he realized that he was going to have to take care of the robot that Mirage was talking about. Gazer Beam's weakness is reflective surfaces, and if he was able to destroy the first Omnidroid he faced, it likely was not designed with a reflective surface, so I'm assuming Gazer Beam easily fried it in half with his lasers and won his first battle no problem. After he was left, he was paid a lot of money, and there was probably nothing suspicious about the island to him there, so he didn't tell anyone about it at the time. However, he then gets an invite back to have dinner with Syndrome and Mirage, so this is likely where he realizes that now is the chance to figure out what the island was really about. He didn't know that it was a trap to head back, so he accepted the invitation and headed back, not realizing that that would be a mistake.
Stop it with the farts.
Officially became suspicious. Now remember I said Everseer had already been on the island?
When did they come? Oh my gosh.
So he was able to see all the future events taking place on the
Come
island.
on, guys. Get out of there.
About Syndrome's computer's password being Kronos. So Gazer Beam found this clue when he got there, or he simply didn't find a clue and just investigated the place without anyone noticing. Eventually, he got into the room that leads to Syndrome's computer, and as Syndrome and Mirage exited the lava wall, he might have overheard them talking about their evil Operation Kronos plan. So this made him realize he had to go find out what was really going on this island. And so Gazer Beam snuck past Syndrome and Mirage and got into this room. He then hacked the computer or typed in Kronos, thus seeing what Mr. Incredible had also seen later on. Gazer Beam knew officially he was screwed here, so once the alarm went off, he got caught, and I think that Syndrome and Mirage just threw him back on the island instead of holding him hostage. I think Gazer Beam managed to run from the Omnidroid until this very point, where he used his laser beam eyes on the Omnidroid just for it to reflect off it and strike him in his torso. Wounded, Gazer Beam dove off the waterfall and hid into the cave he found underwater. As he bled out, he lasered the word Kronos into the wall, hoping someone in the future would find this and figure out Syndrome's evil plan. Sure enough, this worked. Sure enough, this worked as Mr. Incredible ended up getting here and seeing what Syndrome was up to. How every super probably died in the Incredibles.
Go to your jobs right now. I'll terminate you. Like,
Here's a summary of how Syndrome plans to
I
kill all
won't
supers
say
in
it
this evil plan
because
called Operation Kronos. With a threat rating of, hold up, 6-7, Stormicide had the power of vapor absorption and emission, and flight through vapor emission. Before I explain what her powers are, it's important to note that in the movie there was a mistake on Syndrome's screen where it said she had the powers of electrical discharge and gale bursts, and these aren't actually her powers. If it were, then she would basically be a faster version of this guy in The Incredibles 2. Also, there was a mistake on Downburst screen 2 where it said gaseous explosion and flight as his powers, but this turns out to actually be Stormicide's. Anyway, Stormicide's powers were that her body acted like a sponge, so she could absorb and emit vapors of different chemical properties, such as oxygen, nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas, and even fart. I bet her and Incredible Gassy would make a great duo. You agree? Also, she can absorb and emit hydrogen chloride, an acidic and corrosive gas that can burn through solid materials. So remember this later when she has to fight the Omnidroid. According to her NSA files, she was a graduate student in chemistry and caretaker of her ailing uncle. The chemistry part makes sense since she needs to learn how to use a lot of different chemicals for her powers, so learning chemistry would be important to her. But what in the world is the importance of caretaker of her ailing uncle? Moving on. Stormicide appeared to have no connections with any other supers, so Syndrome and Mirage likely had to work pretty hard to find her location. After she got recruited and was put on the island to face the 5th Omnidroid version, I think I have a good idea of what happened. If I personally were Stormicide, I would emit and absorb helium to make myself fly. Then I would hover over the Omnidroid and emit a bunch of hydrogen chloride gas to surround the Omnidroid and destroy it. However, she died on the first try, and according to the wiki, she cannot emit vapors before she absorbs them. Are we serious? This girl's basically useless. I bet she was like, hey Mirage, do you have a batch of hydrogen chloride that I could use on the island to take care of that robot? Nope. And then Stormicide was likely killed pretty easily, since there were no vapors for her to use on the island to kill the Omnidroid with. Unless she was able to bring vapors to absorb, but still couldn't do anything because
come on, bro, you gotta be flipping.
So please congrats. No. I was so close to.
For Brittany, it's more than a move. It's a new city.
What do you want, bro?
It's a brand new horizon that's hers for the taking. It's more than a move, and we're more than a truck.
Stop scrolling for a sec. It's time to power
Nah, bro.
Create your own sunshine.
Because it was driving me insane. No.
Daily tan with Jergens Natural Glow.
Holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, and call it an early present for next year, like 11 months early, which takes you from the worst ever to the best ever. You already f***ed up, right? What do you have to lose?
Come on. I don't want to like babies. I want
Every
to
super
like
probably got
babies.
in The Incredibles, episode 11, Gamma Jack. The episode everyone has been waiting for is finally here. If you want, grab something to eat or drink, and let's get to it. First, let's travel back in time in The Incredibles timeline and go back to where it all started with Syndrome, aka Buddy Pine. Buddy was a young boy during the glory days where supers was still legal. And one thing Buddy has always fantasized about was becoming the sidekick of his idol Mr. Incredible and become Incrediboy. Unfortunately for Buddy, Mr. Incredible always preferred to work alone, and if he teamed up with some kid, it likely would end up getting Buddy hurt, and Mr. Incredible did not want to worry about that risky responsibility. So Mr. Incredible rejected him to look out for his safety. Of course, this crushed Buddy's heart as his lifelong dream was never going to come true. And so, he snapped and soon became the villain he is. Many people wonder how Buddy became so rich. Well, I personally believe Buddy was a super and had super intelligence. However, he didn't know this. This is how he was able to invent these gadgets that no one has ever made before him, and thus he sold these to the government to become rich and powerful. He soon became Syndrome and began to kill supers through his evil plan called Operation Kronos. All because Mr. Incredible had rejected him. If you're new and you don't know exactly how Syndrome kills each super, read this quick paragraph explanation. Now, let's go to the other side of the coin, his partner Mirage. Well, back in the glory days, Mirage was likely a fan of the supers too. However, instead of Mr. Incredible, she loved Gamma Jack. Even in this old photo of Gamma Jack, she's literally right there next to him. If I had to guess Mirage's age here, I'd say she was an older teen. Anyways, as a fan of Gamma Jack, I believe at some point Mirage and Buddy crossed paths and became friends through their love of supers. Mirage quoted in the movie that she was attracted to power, which is why she worked with Syndrome. Well, as a fan of Gamma Jack, I think that maybe Mirage was one of the attractive women he had saved before. And of course, Gamma Jack had tons of women all over him. Mirage was likely one of the girls he rejected, and so she began to not like supers. I do think, though, that she was not as cruel and obsessed as Buddy was, which is why she eventually turned on him to help save Mr. Incredible 15 years later. And so, once supers were made illegal, I believe this was how Buddy and Mirage teamed up, as Mirage saw Buddy as a rich, powerful, and intelligent guy who wanted to get rid of supers. And Mirage didn't mind this at all. Plus, they were both rejected by their favorite heroes. Now, back to Gamma Jack. Gamma Jack was like the Homelander of the Incredibles universe, sort of, as he prioritized saving attractive women over anyone else. He even hated fighting attractive women villains. Another thing that made Gamma Jack stand out from all the other supers is that he believed supers were a superior race, very similar to Homelander. Also, not to mention, the movie takes place in 1947 and 15 years later in 1962. So that means the glory days happened right after World War II. And in his NSA file, the NSA says to keep a close monitoring on him. I just think we know why they thought this of Gamma Jack. They should run a test on him to see if he is German, not to mention he has blonde hair and blue eyes. I do think Gamma Jack was still a good guy, but he definitely had some questionable beliefs and suspicious behavior. Anyways, fast forward to when Syndrome and Mirage were killing supers. I think Mirage always made sure to keep in touch with Gamma Jack, and it's definitely the reason why she was able to lure him in. Gamma Jack was out of the public eye for a while.
Come on, bro, help me.
Female fans calls him up to ask for help with superhero work. Yeah, I bet it didn't take much convincing for Gamma Jack to go to Syndrome's Island, as Mirage was the main reason he went. With a threat rating of 7.9, the second highest out of all the supers shown on screen in the movie, being behind Mr. Incredible, Gamma Jack had the powers of light and controlled radiation bursts, which would be extremely deadly to anything, human or robot. Anyways, I think Gamma Jack easily disintegrated the version 5 Omnidroid he had to face, because even though it was designed with a reflective surface to counter Gazer Beam, and is probably already really fast and strong, I do believe the radiation burst would easily fry it no problem. After getting paid, Gamma Jack
I don't know where I left
so
my
hyped when he left, and he was
bucket.
even more
I think I left
excited
it
after
here.
Mirage called him back to have dinner with him. Bro probably thought he was going on a date, even though he was actually about to face the next stronger Omnidroid version that will ambush him and kill him. Now, this is where the story gets tricky. I think there could have been two different outcomes to what happened to Gamma Jack, and it all depends on Mirage. Gamma Jack and Mirage had a past history with each other. So, does Mirage stay loyal to Syndrome and let Gamma Jack get killed, or does she come up with a plan to save him? Let's start with the bad ending that probably happened to Gamma Jack. I think Mirage tricked Gamma Jack into having a nice dinner just to backstab him and kill him herself. Or she just let the Omnidroid take care of him, and since his radiation burst would be countered, he would get cocky and think he would be able to destroy it again, but instead be killed. Now time for the more interesting ending that could play a factor in The Incredibles 3. Hear me out, it is known that Syndrome wasn't able to recover all the Super's bodies on the island like psych waves. So what if, on the day of Gamma Jack's second fight, Mirage did something to trick Syndrome into believing Gamma Jack died? And in reality, she saved him but told him not to tell anyone about Operation Chronos. Knowing Gamma Jack could secretly be evil too, maybe he went along with her plan and let the future Supers be killed, thus escaping and is still alive. And now with Gamma Jack's trending on TikTok, I'm willing to bet my left big toe that the writers of The Incredibles 3 have flipped the script and will have Gamma Jack return as the villain. Even Mirage returns, and now the kids will have to fight them. How every super probably died in The Incredibles. Episode 12, Frozone. Before we start, Frozone did not die in The Incredibles. However, today we're going to discuss what would have happened if Frozone had actually gone to Syndrome's Island and being Operation
This is going to be the. This is going to be the.
When Mr. Incredible looks up Frozone's location on Syndrome's computer, it is
Going to be the Wheat
Syndrome
Island.
Mirage knew where to find Frozone. Now, if we go back to the scene where Mr. Incredible and Frozone saved the people in the burning building, here's where Mirage is
I'm going to go.
Frozone and Mr. Incredible. He actually says that Frozone is with the fat guy again, meaning at the time they didn't know that was Mr. Incredible, which means they were targeting Frozone. However, after Mr. Incredible and Frozone saved the people in the burning building, Mr. Incredible smashes through a wall into the bank, showing off his super strength. Mirage is still watching outside. This here confirms that the fat guy was Mr. Incredible. And so she tells Syndrome that they are switching targets, meaning they were going to try to recruit Mr. Incredible instead of Frozone. But what if none of that actually happened? And Mirage decided to spy on Frozone a different day. So therefore she decides to recruit Frozone and not Mr. Incredible. So now with Frozone heading to the island, would he be able to survive? Or more importantly, stop Operation Chronos and Syndrome? Well, with an unknown threat rating, Frozone has the powers of cryokinesis, which is ice generation, snow generation. He's also immune to coldness and has airborne mobility in which he can generate ice in the air to skate across it. His weaknesses, however, is that if he is dehydrated, his ability to generate ice is weakened. For example, in this scene, after him and Mr. Incredible escape the burning building, Frozone is hot and dehydrated. So he tells the cop he is getting a drink, which hydrates him and gives him back his power. And thus he freezes the cop. Also, in hot and low humidity environments, he cannot generate large quantities of ice due to less water vapor in the air. Now back to Syndrome's Island. If Frozone had taken Mr. Incredible's spot, he would be fighting the Omnidroid that Mr. Incredible originally beat, which also had a blue sensor on it, meaning it was meant to kill Frozone since he wore blue. But this could also mean Mr. Incredible since he fought in his original blue suit, so I don't know. Now, in Mr. Incredible's fight, the Omnidroid tries to push Mr. Incredible towards the lava to weaken him because it thinks it is fighting Frozone.
Hope on it.
Frozone's pretty powerful, and that he would have a high
About the kids.
so I think he would be able to put up a fight against the Omnidroid. However, if the Omnidroid is able to get Frozone close to the lava, Frozone is screwed. Honestly, as much as I love Frozone, I think he would lose his first fight. Although the jungle island he fights on is humid, it is still hot. So after a bit of fighting and using ice on the Omnidroid, I think Frozone will get dehydrated pretty quickly. Not only that, the Omnidroid will actively try to hurt and knock Frozone closer and closer to the lava area, and once Frozone gets cornered down there, he will likely die. So now this means that Mr. Incredible never came, and the movie we all saw where Syndrome lost in the end is reversed. And now Syndrome likely kills a few more random supers and finally launches the final Omnidroid.
That's basically everything I have.
And becomes a new fan favorite super, even though he was a fake super. He then to everyone so they can become supers, and therefore no one is really special anymore since everyone has powers. The world will likely fall apart along with supers dying out, and so Syndrome wins in the end. How every super probably died. Episode 13, Meta Man. Before we start, in The Incredibles, when Mr. Incredible talks to Edna about his new suit, he wants a cape, but Edna says nothing, because lots of supers have died from the cape. One of these was Meta Man, and now that a lot of people pointed out, there's no way this guy died from getting his cape stuck while some others in it is fan-made. But many of you don't realize this, so I'm pointing it out. Check the description of the video if you disagree with me. Anyways, I'm going to reference that fan-made video because it does seem to have an accurate rating for Metaman.
Okay.
The second highest out of
I
all
really don't know what to do. Oh, you tried it.
incredible. Metaman has tons of powers, and he's basically the adult Jack-Jack. However, he doesn't have as many powers as Jack-Jack does, but he still has a lot. All the powers Metaman has are flight, super strength,
Hyper shock.
agility, durability,
That was so
endurance,
stupid.
vision, sonic streaming, teleportation, magnetic manipulation, partial
Hyper shock.
and the aquatic manipulation. This guy is overpowered. Look at his stats. He has 3 of them maxed out. One being strength, which means I feel like he should have a higher threat rating than Mr. Incredible. But one thing that probably makes Mr. Incredible higher than Metaman is the fact that Metaman lacks intelligence and indestructibility, which are very important. Now, with these abilities, there's no way he should have gotten crushed by an elevator if his kid got stuck. He would have teleported out of there or used his strength or a magnetic manipulation to stop the elevator from crushing him. So then I must think his stupidness probably meant he lacked fast thinking, which got him killed here because he wasn't able to react fast enough. However, I still think this was pretty wild of an event to kill this overpowered guy. So what happened if he went to Syndrome's Island? Well, I personally think the android that had to face Metaman stood no chance at all, and he likely just picked it up and threw it into the volcano. Now, Metaman dies in his second fight, and the second fight usually starts in this room where Syndrome invites the Super back for dinner to discuss whatever or do whatever. However, it is actually a trap. So luckily, Metaman was caught off guard once the next Omnidroid surprise attacked him and he was killed. But hold on, Metaman has X-ray vision. You would have seen it standing outside. So I think foul play was involved here, and Syndrome and Mirage cheated. Probably just drugged Metaman and killed them on their own instead of giving him a fair chance. That's the only logical reasoning I could come up with for his death. Well, that's all. What do you guys think? Do you think he died in the elevator accident, or did Syndrome and Mirage be unfair and killed Metaman themselves by giving him sleeping pills or something? How every super probably died in The Incredibles. Episode 14, Elastigirl. Obviously, Elastigirl doesn't die in The Incredibles, but what would have happened to her if she went to Syndrome's Island and participated in his evil Operation Chronos plan? As we all saw,
I was on my flipping carrots. Oh my.
Will his wife Elastigirl be able to beat 1 or 2, or will she die in her first fight? Now, like Frozone, Elastigirl never ended up getting recruited by Syndrome and Mirage to go to the island. However, unlike Frozone, her location was labeled as unknown here when Mr. Incredible looked her location up on Syndrome's computer.
Okay.
They have never found where she lived. But what if they had and she accepted their invite? Well, with a threat rating of 6.2, this puts Elastigirl in the more mid-category in terms of threat rating.
Mid.
As Mr. Incredible had the highest with 91.1, and I think Frozone would have around a 7.2. Now, Elastigirl has a powerful body stretch her body parts up to 30 meters. She also has enhanced agility as it is maxed out on her stat bar, and she can
Where is the
around things like a parachute or even a boat. Wait a second.
the
Did Dash ride his? Moving on. Elastigirl would likely have to face a harder Omnidroid version since her location likely would be hard to find.
what? What did he say?
I'm going to compare her against Mr. Incredible's Omnidroid that he had to face. I'm gonna be honest, Elastigirl is good. I highly doubt Elastigirl's elasticity will be able to do much damage against an extremely strong and intelligent robot, even if she is able to dodge its attacks or wrap her body around its arms. However, the Omnidroid can't snap Elastigirl in half because she can stretch, so they'll likely have to crush her or kill her in a different way than trying to break her back like it tried with Mr. Incredible. I know some people may think Elastigirl or even Frozone would be able to win one fight, but to be fair, Mr. Incredible was inches away from getting killed in his first fight, and in his second he was saved because of being Syndrome's old favorite. So I think Elastigirl dies in her first fight, but now I wonder, what if the kids were to fight an Omnidroid? We don't know for sure how strong each kid would be since they aren't at their full potential yet, since none of them are adults, especially Jack-Jack, so I'm going to base them off at their present age. We have seen super speed supers like Blitzerman get killed already, so Dash also easily loses his first fight. Although Violet can protect herself with her force field and turn invisible, the Omnidroid's sheer weight could break her force field as seen here in this scene, and even if Violet turns invisible, she still won't beat the Omnidroid by simply hiding on the island. Now that the older 2 kids are dead, what about Jack-Jack? It's no debate at all! With 17 powers at his age, Jack-Jack still solos the Omnidroid no matter what! Jetpack is overpowered, and even if he's a baby, he is still able to sense danger and use his multitude of abilities to kill anything. He took care of Syndrome on his own, so I think Jack-Jack wins any fight against any Omnidroid version. He's unstoppable. Well, what do you guys think? Could Elastigirl, Violet, or Dash be able to win a fight against an Omnidroid like Jack-Jack? Also, for those wondering, this series is almost over. I will be covering Incredible Gassy next episode, and after that, I'll cover...
Hell no.
battle, so stay tuned.
Who knows? But the place to find the place is a
This will be the big island.
every morning in hardworking America, Hardee's biscuit makers rise to make our original made-from-scratch biscuits. Famous since 1977 and still the greatest goodness around. Find the best deals on the Hardee's app. Switch to TurboTax. File free in the app by 2/28. All 100% free. Now this is Texas.
This. Shut up.
How every super probably died in The Incredibles. Episode 15, Incredible Gassy. Weighing at 420 pounds and standing at 6'7" tall, Incredible Gassy is known to be one of the most powerful supers in The Incredibles. Incredible Gassy is rumored to be the long-lost brother of Mr. Incredible, but it has never been confirmed. Incredible Gassy looks similar to Mr. Incredible, however he is morbidly obese, green, and smells like absolute cheeks. This is because Incredible Gassy does not wear cologne, unlike Mr. Incredible. He is a real super, and one of the ones who never ended up going to Syndrome's Island to participate in Syndrome's evil Operation Kronos plan. So what would have happened if he actually did have to fight an Omnidroid? With a threat rating of 9.9, Incredible Gassy has the powers of uncontrollable atomic parting, gaseous explosions, and is able to emit toxic arc clouds that instantly kill anything.
You're joking.
The only known thing in existence that is able to be immune to the toxic farts is Incredible Gassy himself. Because of this, it is best to avoid Incredible Gassy at all costs. Because he smells so bad, if anyone were to get in a 6.7-mile radius of him, they would likely pass out due to the horrendous fumes. Now, what if Incredible Gassy were to fight an Omnidroid? Well, the answer is easy. The Omnidroid would malfunction immediately, as once Incredible Gassy's farts surround or even touch the Omnidroid, the toxic fumes would get into its system and immediately destroy it. Not a single thing
Impale-
able to defeat Incredible Gassy, except for his only weakness, which is mustard. If Incredible Gassy consumes or touches mustard, he instantly dies. So in conclusion, it would be best for Syndrome and Mirage to simply not recruit Incredible Gassy at all, because if they did, they would die. Incredible Gassy is still alive to this day, but no one knows where he is right now. My guess, at a random Burger King. Fun fact, Incredible Gassy's favorite restaurant is Burger King, and he likes foot lettuce. So every
Ew.
probably got in The Incredibles. Episode 16, Splashdown and Plasma Bolt. In The Incredibles, we never actually see Plasma Bolt mentioned, but she does have an NSA file. And for Splashdown, we do see in a cutscene of Edna telling Mr. Incredible, "Knock it!" that Splashdown dies after Escape gets caught by a vortex, where he is pulled into it and dies. However, this makes no sense at all because Splashdown should be able to handle a vortex coming from the ocean. Let's talk about Splashdown first. He is one of the cape malfunction supers that never actually participated in Syndrome's evil Operation Kronos plan. However, many people believe that Splashdown was a part of Operation Kronos and that his cape death from the vortex was made up and Edna was mistaken. Now, Splashdown's powers are flight, aquatic adaptation, underwater high-speed grounding, aquatic light communication, and water manipulation. Yeah, there's no shot this guy died that vortex. He could have easily swam out, swam away, manipulated the water from the vortex to stop it, anything but dying. Like Meta Man, though, his indestructibility stat bar is pretty low, so maybe his neck got snapped when it pulled him in. However, his NSA file lists him as missing in action, so maybe no one witnessed his death and he didn't die here, but at Syndrome's Island. I'm going to reference this video saying threat rating is 7.4. One of Splashdown's major weaknesses is that he needs to stay intensely hydrated, which is somewhat similar to Frozone. I'm pretty sure that once Mirage put Splashdown out of the island, they gave him no water, and since the island is hot and humid, he likely got dehydrated really fast, and once the Omnidroid found him, he got killed. Hey guys, go take a quick piss? Thanks. Nice day we're having, right? Now, moving on to Plasma Bolt. Plasma Bolt was never seen in the movie nor had a cape malfunction death, but she does exist, so what happened? I'm gonna be honest, I feel like her her and Fironic are the only two supers that actually managed to live a safe life, because neither of them had tape accidents nor were mentioned in Operation Kronos. But what if Plasma Bolt has gone to Syndrome's Island? Well, she has the powers of flight and plasma wave emission. Plasma is superheated gas that is extremely deadly towards humans.
Yeah.
And honestly, seeing her threat rating from this fan-made video is 8.2, I'm going to say she won her first fight against the Omnidroid, as plasma waves would definitely fry metal or whatever the Omnidroid is made of. However, of course, when she gets invited back to have dinner on the island, she gets...
Guys, I might be ending the video here. Thank you for the 18 subs. Have a great day and
Also, she
goodbye.